This is quite possibly one of the best things Wargaming could have done for gameplay playability, at least from my personal opinion, and that is of course removing the colour filters from all of the maps within World of Tanks console. So be sure to kind of give your own thoughts on the colour filters, and you can see in the background we've got a couple of comparisons between the two, and we're going to be talking about them and whether this is kind of a good shift for Wargaming to go down, and also why we should be seeing more updates like this and what sort of updates we could see that would improve the game in a similar manner to this. Colour filters were introduced within the game probably about a year and a bit ago, and of course they were basically implemented after update 6.0 and all of the controversy around that, and as we move forward they kind of became a little bit more of a problem. When they first were introduced they basically made the maps absolutely horrific and in some cases unplayable. Things like Sand River were really impossible to play because essentially the glare from the maps was terrible, and I think that now that they've removed them I've realised just how much better the maps now look within the game, and I definitely think that this was a good idea from Wargaming to do, and it allows you to just get so much better vision on a lot of the opponents and really play the game how it should be, and it's more tactical rather than just being like whitewashed and grey washed that the game previously seemed to be playing like. You know, for example, on things like Heilbronn, the map is very grey, and it was very dark and dingy and just looks very terrible in my personal opinion. But since the update they basically removed that filter, and so it looks like a normal map now, a normal summer map, and I think that's definitely something that's been really appreciated by the community. And of course let me know whether you think that this was a good change, or did you actually prefer the colour filters. You're probably in the minority if you preferred the colour filters, but yeah, it's definitely interesting to see what you guys think. Obviously maybe I might be wrong in my assumption there, but yeah, I guess we'll see in the comment section down below. One aspect I really wanted to touch on within this video is of course the other graphical issues within the game and the problems that a lot of you guys have been saying within the comment section on various different videos, not just this one, but in general what I want to recap on is of course the HUD and the HUD elements within the game. And of course what I mean by that is obviously the screen overlay. What does your ammunition say, etc, etc. What does the layout of the HUD actually do within the game, and whether it's actually better to have an older style HUD within the game. Now Wargaming have talked about this in the past, maybe a couple months ago they basically said that they would be reintroducing a new old HUD, if that makes sense. So if you've ever played before update 6.0 and you had all of the kind of, it was almost like a cartoony looking HUD, it certainly wasn't like up to date I guess, but Wargaming are looking to reintroduce a similar sort of HUD layout and stuff like that back into the game, which is definitely something that I know you guys would have probably be very interested in getting back into the game, because you know, if you don't like it you can just swap back to the modern version of the HUD, and that's the options that Wargaming are trying to introduce, where you can pick basically between the two. And I think that this is really crucial that Wargaming get this out, because it really does help out with those of you who are interested in actually playing the game how you want to play it, not just what Wargaming have given you. And that kind of moves into the next point, which is of course the actual gameplay mechanics themselves. Now one thing that I know people don't like about both game modes, you know, some people are real advocates for the True Vision game mode and some people are absolutely dead against the True Vision mode, but I think maybe having the option whereby you can pick either of the two would be really cool for people to be able to do. So for example, if you want to play World War II with True Vision, you can play that. If you want to play Cold War without True Vision, you can play that as well. I think that that would be really good for the game to actually get and receive within the game, because that will allow us to kind of move forward with the aim of actually being able to play what we want, not just what Wargaming have given us. Because I think for me personally, playing the Cold War with True Vision is probably my least favourite aspect of the Cold War game mode. All of the content is there for me, at least personally. There's plenty of tanks to play, there's plenty of ways to grind through, there's different maps, there's plenty of kind of extras within the game, but the core issue for me personally is just the True Vision. I think it removes a little bit of skill out of the game, and it causes this kind of YOLO mentality that then transfers onto the World War II game mode, where that definitely doesn't work. So yeah, I'm not particularly too fussed on that. However, what I think is that people should be able to be given the choice of which they want, and we've seen that with these colour filters. Wargaming have basically released polls on whether people want that, what the majority is, and the majority was that they wanted the colour filters removed, and that's what we've seen. Now what we do want is, of course, polls on these various different matters. You know, I'm just one person, so I'm just putting out the conversation about it. You might say, well, actually, I think it's exactly how it should be. There shouldn't be any changes. And if, you know, the majority of players say that, then, you know, I'm just in the minority. I'll accept the fact that, you know, you guys actually want that as well. But I think given the opportunity, you know, it's not going to negatively impact anything. At least hopefully. I think player numbers are the key kind of crux of the issue with creating loads of game modes. But yeah, I think that that's kind of an issue that I think could be solved at least at some point. And I mean, even if we then change like the World War II mode to something else whereby, you know, you can go from tier 10 to like a tier 11, 12, 13, 14, blah 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 blah. If they actually just introduced the Cold War tanks into World War II and just added those on, that would be kind of an interesting thing, I think, for the game. And, you know, then you can pick between the two modes. It's not really impacting anything, because if you were playing World War II, you're still going to be playing World War II, but you just won't have a max tier of tier 10 anymore. It'll be like tier 19 or whatever it is. So I think that would have been cool. Don't know how Wargaming are going to work it, but talking about how the Wargaming matchup actually works currently, I think we'll talk about the +1, -1 and the gameplay crux that is introducing to the game. And I think that that is something that people kind of forget about within the game, is that the +1, -1 seems to be a very kind of popular decision from, I guess, Wargaming standpoint, because they keep releasing it. They know people want it. It's just whether they can kind of justify putting +1, -1 forever. And I think that that's the core issue, is that people don't want to always be playing +1, -1, and people also don't want to be playing +2, -2 all of the time. It's very difficult, because people that don't want to be playing +2, -2 are the people that basically are grinding through the tech tree, and you're playing tier 6 coming up against tier 8, but then when they get to tier 8 they want to be coming up against tier 6s. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts. It's like, yeah, they might not want it at that current moment in time, but then like 2 weeks later when they're at the tier 8 and they want to be playing against people that can't do anything against them, it's kind of like an issue. And I think, yeah, the way that Wargaming are currently doing it, at least from my personal opinion, I think it's not too bad. We're getting +1, -1 weekends, kind of almost like every other weekend, which is good. It allows you to kind of focus on when you want to play the game and when you want to justify spending all your time playing and grinding through the tech trees, and that really helps you progress as fast as possible, whilst also not like wanting to bash your head against a brick wall, because we all know how it can be playing some of the stock tanks through the tech tree comparatively to just playing premiums that are just better in almost every way. But yeah, that's kind of the next topic of this video, is the premium / tech tree balance and how that's kind of progressed since update 6.0 and whether that's got any better. And obviously with all of these topics, it's really crucial that you guys talk about it, and, you know, we can discuss what you actually think in the comments. And I think that what I'm trying to get at with this in particular, the premium tank discussion, is gauge your opinions on how you think it's going, because I think it is getting better. I think that previously Wargaming's mentality was every single premium tank has to be better than the previous premium tank or people won't buy it, and I don't think that's the case. People buy premium tanks because they want to, I don't know, play the new content. I think that's the driving motivation of a lot of people that buy premium tanks. They're not necessarily buying the tank because it's super overpowered. I mean, some people who play the game will definitely do that because they want to be in the most competitive tank in the game or whatever it may be. But what does that actually cost you in terms of the player base that maybe don't buy premium tanks, and maybe who would have bought premium tanks but stopped playing because they were coming up against overpowered tanks, that you may have made like a 5% increase in the sales that week but then lost like maybe 20% of the customer base because you've introduced this broken premium that's going to be in the game for years and years and years, and that's going to cost you your kind of future revenue within the game. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts, but I think it's really important that Wargaming don't just release overpowered premiums all of the time, and you've been seeing that, and I think that that's definitely a positive. However, what I would like to see is, because Wargaming are basically saying like, oh no, we're not going to buff or nerf any premium tanks, Panzer 5-4, I'm looking directly at you, but what would be really cool is that they start to continue with what they've currently been doing, and that's buffing all of the tech tree tanks, because you'll notice that Wargaming aren't just buffing the terrible tech tree tanks in the game, they're buffing pretty much all of them, like line by line by line. But remember, the premium tanks, unless they're terrible, I mean like Goronich or something, or like the KV5 Standard Edition, I mean they're not terrible, that's probably not a good example, but something like a Super Pershing could definitely deal with some buffs. So they're buffing like the terrible premium tanks, which is all okay, but they're buffing the tech tree tanks more considerably, and I think that that's kind of closing the gap between the overpowered premiums and the actual tanks that you can play for free within the game, which is really, really, really good. And I think you guys have definitely been seeing that and been happy to see that within the game, and I think what I want to see next is just that continuing, and I really hope Wargaming do that. Of course, let me know your opinions in the comment section down below. We're going to end it there. Hopefully you saw the gameplay differences between the two colour variants. I want to see your opinions on that, and of course the opinions on your premium tanks, on the maps, on the introduction of new maps, on basically anything gameplay orientated, not like business decision wise by Wargaming, and the introduction of those premium tanks that maybe are just way better than the tech tree tanks, and trying to close that gap. But there we go, hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you want to check out gameplay and how to get better in game, then make sure to click on one of these playlists on screen, and I hope that you join me there. Goodbye.